because you want that pint of ice cream every month in your freezers. I know that. I want to thank Ben Cohen for being here, and I want to thank Susan Ejark for allowing us to use this beautiful facility today. And I want to thank all of you for being here for what is obviously the most significant election in the history of this country. And I'm here today to tell you that I need your help to win the very important Democratic primary here in New Hampshire. We're going to need your help to win the Democratic nomination. We are going to need your help to beat the most dangerous president in the history of this country. And we're going to need your help the day after the inauguration to transform this country and create an economy and a government that works for everybody and not just the 1%. So we've got a lot of work in front of us, but I am absolutely confident that we are going to win here in New Hampshire, that we are going to win the nomination, and it will give me more pleasure than I have ever had in my life when together we defeat Donald Trump. Now, I want to say, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on Trump. He's not worth a whole lot of time. But my dislike of Trump is not just that he's a pathological liar. My dislike of Trump is not just that he told the American people in 2016 that he would provide health care to everybody. Remember that? And then he ended up fighting to throw 32 million people, including many in New Hampshire, off of the health care they already have. My dislike for Trump is not just that he said that his tax proposal would not benefit the wealthy. Remember that? Well, it turns out that over a 10-year period, 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. He lied about that. And you may remember that when he came to New Hampshire and Vermont and went all over this country, he said, I'm a different type of Republican. I will not cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Well, he lied about that too. Because if you look at his budgets, massive cuts to Medicaid, $1.5 trillion, massive cuts to Medicare, and billions in cuts to Social Security. So those are reasons enough to dislike Donald Trump and to vote against him. And I hope the people who voted for him in New Hampshire understand that. But there is something even deeper and more visceral in terms of what Trump is trying to do than just throw millions off the health insurance they have. For the first time in my lifetime, regardless of political persuasion, we've had conservatives in the White House, we had liberals in the White House. This is the first president who, in a very calculated, deliberate way, is trying to divide the American people up based on the color of their skin, based on their religion, based on where they were born, based on their sexual orientation. And he thinks that for cheap political gain, he is able as President of the United States to try to turn us against each other. Well, we got news for Donald Trump. That strategy is not going to work. We are going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American. We're going to bring our people, gay and straight, those of us who were born in the United States, those of us who came to the United States. And I speak as the son of somebody who came to the United States at the age of 17, couldn't speak a word of English, had no money at all. Exactly the kind of person Donald Trump does not want to come to America. But I thank my father for coming here. And he was the proudest American you ever saw because he was able to create a decent life for his kids and his wife. So we are where we are right now. And where we are is the necessity of not only beating Trump, but doing what has to be done to transform this country and create an economy that works for all of us. What does that mean in concrete terms? And I want to thank the people of New Hampshire for helping us move this country along. Many of you will remember that when I was here 4 years ago, many of the ideas that I talked about were seemingly wild and crazy ideas. Ideas that the political establishment rejected, the media rejected. Well, guess what? Virtually all of those ideas are being talked about by almost every candidate running for the Democratic nomination. And that happened, that transformation of politics and what's possible in America happened not because I was so convincing, it happened because the people of New Hampshire were so convincing. They listened to the ideas. They listened to the ideas, and the political establishment said, you can't do that. You can't raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. You can't double the minimum wage. No one has ever done that. Bernie's crazy. Well, we won New Hampshire by 20 points. Turned out we weren't so crazy. So my point is that what New Hampshire did, what Iowa did, what 22 states in total did, is they said that these ideas that we are talking about are ideas that America needs. So let me just go through some of those ideas. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We should not be having millions and millions of people in New Hampshire, in Vermont, all over this country, forced to work 2 or 3 jobs because the wages they're earning are so low. It is not a radical idea. Don't let anybody tell you that it is. That if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. 4 years ago, $15 an hour was an impossible dream. Well, I'm here to tell you that 7 states have passed legislation raising that minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I'm here to tell you that within the next couple of weeks, the United States House of Representatives, unless I'm very mistaken, and I don't think I am, is in fact going to pass the legislation we wrote for a national minimum wage of $15 an hour. Now, nobody here thinks that $15 an hour is going to get anybody rich. It is a minimum. And we have to do better than that. We have to create jobs to pay a lot more than that. 4 years ago, when I was here in New Hampshire, I came up with a quote-unquote radical idea. I said that in this period, K through 12 of free public education is not good enough anymore. Yeah, it was good when I was a kid, because if you graduated high school 40, 50 years ago, you can go out and make it into the middle class and get a decent job. Well, the world has changed. Technology has changed. The economy has changed. People, in most cases, need more education, need more training. So we said 4 years ago, let us make public colleges and universities tuition free. Guess what? That ain't a radical idea anymore either. States and communities are doing it all over the country. I was out in San Francisco last year, and their community college is now tuition-free. They have doubled the enrollment in that college. It's thriving right now. But it is, and on top of that, 4 years ago I said, you know what, it's a little bit crazy that people are told that they should go to college, and then when they get out of college or when they drop out, they find themselves $50,000, $100,000 in student debt. And they're paying off that debt year after year after year. We need more doctors in this country. Talk to doctors from working class backgrounds. They'll tell you they graduated medical school $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt. How insane is that? So our view is, and I'm glad to hear other candidates adopting it, we have got to cancel student debt in this country. Well, I'm told by my opponents, I'm told by my critics, I'm told by the editorial pages all over America, irresponsible. It's very expensive. It is expensive. But if we could bail out the crooks on Wall Street, we could cancel student debt for the millennial generation. If we could give well over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and private corporations, we can save the younger generation and cancel those debts. If we can spend more than 10 times on the military than other countries are spending, more than the next 10 countries are spending, we can cancel student debt. And the reason I propose that is not only because it's the right thing to do. The reason is we have, for the first time in the modern history of this country, our kids will have a lower standard of living than their parents if we don't turn that around. They are going to leave school or enter the workforce with more debt. They're going to earn lower real wages than their parents earned 20 years ago. And they're going to have a much harder time buying their first home. So I think it's time we gave that generation a break, a generation that suffered as a result of the Wall Street crash. And we're going to ask Wall Street, who we bailed out, to help bail out that generation. And there's another issue that I've been talking about for a few years that is gaining some resonance. Used to be pretty radical, not so radical anymore. And it is a very simple, fundamental proposition about who we are as a people. And that is to answer two very simple questions. Number one, is health care a human right? Or is it a privilege? And the second question is, how do we have a healthcare system which guarantees healthcare to all of our people in a cost-effective way? And the answer, in my view, is to expand a program that is already working for the elderly, that is Medicare, and let's make it Medicare for all. Now, here is what is going on with the healthcare system now. What is the function of healthcare today? You got it. That's it. Everybody knows that. Here's the facts. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Anybody having a hard time paying for their prescription drugs? You got elderly people cutting their pills in half. Want to hear insanity, dysfunctionality? 1 out of 5 Americans who goes to a doctor and gets a prescription cannot afford to fill that prescription because the prices are so high. How insane is that? All right. Meanwhile, last year, the top 10 drug companies made $69 billion in profit. All right. So we got a simple message for the drug companies. You will lower prescription drug prices in this country in half. All right? At least. That's right. And that is not a radical idea, because that will simply bring us to where the rest of the world is. Some of you may know that 20 years ago, I took Vermonters over the Canadian border to buy prescription drugs, and a lot of people are doing that, but we shouldn't have to leave our own country. So we're going to tell the drug companies to end their greed. We're not going to ask them, we're going to tell them. And we have some tools to tell them. And they're going to lower their prices. And the other thing we're going to do is to make it clear that the function of a healthcare system is not to make billions of dollars in profits for private insurance companies. That is what the system is about now. Last year, the top 5 companies made $20 billion in profits. The guy who's the head of Aetna, a gentleman named Mr. Bertolini, put together a merger with CVS. Aetna merged with CVS. Do you know how much money he got for putting that merger together? $500 million. Meanwhile, we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough dentists, but the healthcare system can provide $500 million for one guy to do a merger. So in my view, the function of healthcare is to provide quality healthcare to all people as a human right. And under our Medicare for All program, the vast majority of the American people will save money on their health care, because this system is far more efficient. There's another issue out there raised 4 years ago. I was asked at some national debate, TV debate, about what I considered to be the major national security crisis facing this country. And people thought I would say ISIS or Al-Qaeda or China, Russia, all of which are serious problems. You know what my answer was? What was my answer? That's exactly right. That was true 4 years ago, and now people understand how true it is. All over the world, scientists and lay people understand that the future of this planet rests on the need for us to act extremely boldly in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. You all know that the leading scientists in the world told us that we have all of 12 years, less now, to make that transformation. So here's my promise to you. Because climate change is not a New Hampshire issue, it's not a Vermont issue, it's not an American issue, it is a global issue. And as President of the United States, I will not do what Donald Trump does and think that climate change is a hoax. What I will do as President of the most powerful nation on earth is reach out to every country on earth, because this is a global issue, and say to them, maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction killing each other, maybe we should come together as a planet, put that money into transforming our energy system and saving the planet. Now, I don't know if you could do it. You know, I don't know. We have some strange characters all over this world who make a lot of money from fossil fuel, whether it's Russia, whether it's Saudi Arabia, or so forth. But that is the case to be made, that the future of the planet for Saudi Arabia, for Russia, for China, for India, for the United States is at stake. And maybe in the 21st century, we can start getting rid of those weapons and focus on the common enemy that we face, which is the destruction of this planet because of climate change. So that's my pledge to you. Now, all of you know that there are a lot of Democratic candidates who are running for the nomination. I know most of them. A lot of them are in the Senate. They are friends of mine. And you're never going to hear me disparage them. They're serious and good people. And let me speak, I don't want to speak for other people, but I think I am expressing the sentiment of every candidate, that no matter who wins this nomination, and I intend to do everything I can with your help to win it, we are all going to come together to defeat Donald Trump. But people, I am often asked, by the people, by media and so forth, is what distinguishes your campaign? Other people adopting your ideas, what makes you different other than your youthful vitality? And here is the answer. Here is the answer. I try to be honest with the American people in a way that Congress is not honest, the media is really not honest. And that is to ask a simple question. For years and years and years, you've had good people come forward with a lot of good ideas, good legislation, good plans, good things, and they mean it sincerely. And yet, how does it happen after all those party platforms and ideas and everything else? Today, the average American worker is making exactly what he or she made 45 years ago. You got that? Now think about the economy. Everybody here is far more productive in your work because of technology than was the case 45 years ago. But you're not making any more money in real inflation accounted for dollars. How does that happen? Right now, the economy is reasonably strong. Unemployment is low. Stock market is doing well. Over the last year in this reasonably strong economy, that average American worker, if you look at real wages and if you look at benefits, is actually worse off than he or she was a year ago in a good economy. How does it happen? I want you to hear this. That over the last 30 years, the top 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth. You got that? 21 trillion. What happened to the bottom half of the American people? Anyone know? They lost about $900 billion. Over the last 30 years, the people on top have become phenomenally richer. CEOs now make 300 times what their workers make. Meanwhile, half of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what that means, paycheck to paycheck? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. When you live paycheck to paycheck, you worry that if your kid gets sick, you can't afford to take her to the doctor. You worry that if your wife becomes seriously ill and ends up in the hospital, you have no idea how you're going to pay that $50,000 bill. And you know you're going to be hounded for the rest of your life in trying to pay off of that bill. That's living paycheck to paycheck. Half of the American people are in that position today. Today in America, you're not going to see this much on TV. It's not what the issues they cover. Wealthiest 3 people own more wealth, 3 people, than the bottom half of America. Got that? Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. And tonight in America, over 500,000 people, including 30,000 veterans, will be sleeping out on the streets. So how does all of that happen? And I will tell you why that happens in a way that I think none of my opponents will. And that is, it's not that people are insincere when they come up with their ideas. It is that we as Americans are going to have to deal with a very difficult reality that, frankly, a lot of people are uncomfortable dealing with. And that is to understand that in America today, you have a corporate elite, an oligarchy, that has extraordinary power over the economic and political life of this country. All right, let me tell you what's going on right now. We bailed out Wall Street 10 years ago, and many of you are paying 25% interest rates on your credit cards. That's what Wall Street does. If you want Medicare for all, you know what we have to do? It's not just a plan. I got a long, complicated piece of legislation. That's not good enough. What we have to do is take on the insurance companies and the drug companies who will spend hundreds of millions of dollars lying about Medicare for all. You want to tackle the existential threat of climate change and save the planet? Well, you know what we're going to have to do? It's not coming up with a 48-page program. It is having the courage to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry and to tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. You want criminal justice reform? You want to end the absurdity of the United States having more people in jail than any other major country on earth? You're going to have to take on the prison industrial complex. You want to get our national priorities right and improve education in this country and make sure that teachers get the respect and the remuneration that they deserve? You want to have universal child care in this country? Well, you're going to have to take on the military-industrial complex. You want tax reform in this country so that major corporations like Amazon, $11 billion in profits last year, owned by the wealthiest guy in America, did not pay 1 penny in federal income tax? You want to deal with that? Well, you're going to have to take on the entire 1%. Now, I say all of that. I say all of that because I could give you a great speech talking about all of the problems we have and all of my ideas to address those problems. But that is not good enough. My message to you today is that real change, and I want you to think about this. Think about real change in America. The labor movement was created when millions of workers stood up and said, you know what, we're not animals. You're going to treat us with dignity and respect. We're going to have collective bargaining. It wasn't somebody on the top who made that decision. The civil rights movement did not occur because somebody in the White House said, you know, maybe we'll allow African Americans in the South to vote. Maybe we'll end segregation. I think it's a great idea. That's not how it happened. It happened when millions of people, African Americans and their white allies, stood up and said, we will no longer accept racism and segregation in America. A 100 years ago, and the kids don't know that. The children don't know that. 100 years ago, women in America did not have the right to vote. In many cases, couldn't get the education they wanted to get, couldn't do the work they wanted to do. That didn't happen because somebody in the White House changed that. It happened because women and their male allies stood up and said, we are sick and tired of women being second-class citizens. If we were here 30 years ago, and somebody jumped up and said, you know what, I think that gay marriage should be legal in America, people would have said, you're nuts, you're crazy, that will never happen. But it did happen because extraordinarily brave people in the LGBT community stood up and said, we are human beings, we will love whom we want to love. That's how change takes place. Frederick Douglass talked about that way back in the abolitionist era. Progress never takes place unless there is struggle. So it is not good enough to talk about great ideas. They're important. We need a blueprint for the future. But nothing happens unless people look around them and say, you know what, this status quo is not working. It's not just, it's not right, it's not fair. So I'm going to need your help. I think we stand an excellent chance. We're strong in Iowa, and I think we stand a really good chance to win there. I think we are very strong here in New Hampshire. We can win here. We're doing much better. I think we stand a great chance to win in South Carolina and in Nevada and in California. And that is the path toward victory. But this state, as you know, plays an enormously important role in the political process. So I'm here today, again, for two reasons. Number one, I'm asking for your help to win here in New Hampshire, but I'm asking for something even deeper than that. Running for president is an issue my wife and I discussed literally for months. I said this before, and it's true. It is the most difficult, non-personal decision we have had to make. We've been married for 30 years. And on Monday, we decided we wanted to do it. Tuesday, we said no. And Wednesday, yes. And Thursday, no. Because all of you know what politics is like today. You know, so it's not just me that gets attacked. My wife gets attacked. My kids get attacked. You know, that's the way it is. All right? It wasn't an easy decision. But we decided to run for two reasons. Number one, I believe that I am the strongest candidate to defeat the worst president in American history. And that's not to say that other Democrats can't win as well. But I think that I am the strongest. I think and polling will tell you that, you know, we got to win in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We're beating Trump in all of those states. We're actually ahead of him in Florida in a recent poll, North Carolina. All right. But that's only half the reason. We've got to beat Trump, that goes without saying. But the other half is where I need your help also. I'm not going to let you go after you win New Hampshire for us. I'm not going to let you go after you win New Hampshire in the general election for us. I need your help the day after the inauguration. Because if you think taking on Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry and the military-industrial complex is going to be easy, you are mistaken. They are doing very, very well. They're making zillions of dollars in profits. They like the status quo. They have significant power over the media. They have power over Congress. So the only way we beat them, and that's why the message of our campaign is us, not me. All right? Because the only way we transform this country is when millions of people stand up and tell the corporate elite that they will no longer continue to run this country, that it is the American people that will run this country. At the end of the day, here's maybe the last point that I make. At the end of the day, the 1% is incredibly powerful. I deal with them every day. They have unlimited amounts of money, and I mean unlimited, okay? They will put all kinds of ugly ads on the television. The people on television will frame their questions in certain ways because of corporate influence. All right, that is the world that we live in. But the 1% at the end of the day is 1%. And you don't have to be a Nobel Prize-winning mathematician to know that 99% is a hell of a bigger number than 1%. So our job is to bring that 99% together. Our job is to fight against Trump's desire to divide us up and come together as black and white, as Latino, as Native American, as Asian American, as gay, straight, immigrant, native born. And when we stand together and when we keep our eyes on the prize, and that is creating the kind of great America that we know we can create, a nation in which all of our people have a decent standard of living, a nation in which women, not politicians, will control their own bodies. A nation in which health care is a right, in which we have the best schools in the world, in which every person has the ability to fulfill their dreams and get the education they need to do that. Think of an America where we don't have a president who rejects science, but a president who leads the world in transforming our energy system and saving the planet. Brothers and sisters, this is not utopian pie-in-the-sky dreaming. We can do those things, but the only way we do that is through an unprecedented grassroots movement. On every issue I have talked to you, the American people are on our side. But many of those people, especially those who are hurting the most, are least likely to vote and participate in the political process. So our job is to reach out to the young people, to working people, to poor people, get them involved in the political process, and when we do, we not only win this election, we're going to win it big. Thank you all very much.
First off, fuck the bitch and the click you claim. West side when we ride, come equipped with game. You claim to be a player, but I fucked your wife. We bust some bad boys, bitches, fuck for life. Bars, lads, bars, you get me? Straight bars from the hood, you get me? And that's all.